I'm Olivia Bennett. I'm 29. And at my mom's wedding, she quoted my sister's college essay, word for word, but never once said my name. 200 guests watched her praise, her shining star, while I sat 3 feet away, invisible. Again. The thing is, those words she quoted? I wrote them 5 years ago for Hannah's application to Northwestern, but my mother doesn't know that. She doesn't know a lot of things about me. Let me take you back to how it all started. I was 5 when I first understood that love in our house had rules I'd never learned. It was Christmas morning. Hannah was 3, still small enough to sit on Dad's lap while he helped her unwrap presents. I was cross-legged on the carpet, methodically folding wrapping paper because Mom had taught me not to waste things. "Look what Santa brought," Mom exclaimed, pulling out a tiny charm bracelet. Real silver with a little heart that caught the light. She fastened it around Hannah's chubby wrist with the kind of reverence you'd use handling something precious. I looked at my own pile of gifts. Books mostly. A journal with a lock. Educational toys that were supposed to make me smarter. Practical things. "Where's mine?" I asked, holding up my wrist. Mom's smile flickered. "Oh, sweetheart, you're too young for jewelry. You'd just lose it." But Hannah was younger than me. "When I'm older?" I pressed. "We'll see," she said, already turning back to Hannah, who was trying to eat the wrapping paper. "Hannah, no, that's not food, silly girl." Mom's voice when she talked to Hannah was different, softer, like she was speaking to something made of spun glass that might break if she wasn't careful enough. When she talked to me, her voice was normal, efficient, like she was reading from a grocery list. I was 7 when I found the jewelry box. It was tucked away in Mom's closet behind the winter coats that smelled like mothballs. Mahogany wood with brass corners, the kind of thing you see in antique stores with tags that say, estate sale. Inside, a tiny ballerina spun on a music box mechanism, and scattered across the red velvet were pieces I'd never seen before. Pearl earrings, a gold locket, a bracelet made of tiny roses, and that Christmas charm bracelet, now joined by a dozen others. I touched the locket gently. It was warm, like it had been worn recently. "What are you doing in here?" I spun around. Mom stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face disappointed, not angry, just tired. "I was just looking," I said quickly. I'm sorry." She sighed and walked over, gently closing the jewelry box. "These belong to your grandmother," she said. "They're very special, very old." "Are they for me and Hannah?" I asked. Another sigh. "Someday, honey, when you're older, when you can take care of them properly." But I watched her slip the locket into Hannah's dress-up box the next week. I watched her fasten those pearl earrings on Hannah for school pictures. I watched her teach Hannah how to clasp the rose bracelet without breaking it. I never asked about the jewelry box again. By the time I was 10, I'd learned to read the pattern. Hannah's a minus on a spelling test earned a trip to get ice cream. My A+ on the same test earned a "good job, sweetie," without Mom looking up from her magazine. When Hannah forgot her lunch, Mom would drop everything and drive to school with a Happy Meal. When I forgot mine, she'd remind me to be more responsible next time. Hannah's tantrums were spirited. Mine were attention-seeking. Hannah's mistakes were learning experiences. Mine were old enough to know better. I stopped telling Mom about my achievements. Not because I was bitter. I was too young to understand bitterness yet. I stopped because I learned that excitement without an audience just feels like talking to yourself. Instead, I started writing things down. In the journal with the lock that Santa had brought me, I wrote about school, about books I was reading, about the way the light looked different in Hannah's room because Mom had hung prisms in her windows. I wrote about the jewelry box, about the way Mom's face changed when Hannah walked into a room, about how I'd started counting the seconds between when I said something and when Mom responded. The average was 7 seconds. For Hannah, it was immediate. I didn't know I was documenting favoritism. I thought I was just paying attention. Middle school was when the differences became harder to ignore. Hannah was in 5th grade, popular and pretty, and everything came easily to her. She had sleepover parties every weekend, and Mom would go all out. making homemade pizza, setting up movies in the living room, buying face masks and nail polish for the girls to share. I was in seventh grade, awkward and serious and more interested in books than boys. I had two close friends, Sarah and Maya, and when I finally worked up the courage to ask if I could have them over, Mom said, "Of course, honey, but maybe just keep it quiet. Hannah has a friend coming over too, and you know how she gets when there's too much noise." Hannah's friend was allowed to stay until midnight, giggling and playing music and doing whatever fifth graders do when they're not being asked to keep it down. My friends went home by 8. "Sorry about that," Sarah said as her mom picked her up. "Maybe next time we can go to my house." There wasn't a next time, at least not at my house. High school was when I stopped trying to compete and started trying to disappear. Hannah was a freshman when I was a junior, and watching her navigate those hallways was like watching someone who'd been given a map to a place I'd been wandering around lost for years. She joined 3 clubs in her first week. She made varsity cheerleading as a freshman. She dated a senior who drove her to school in his Jeep and carried her books like she was made of porcelain. I was editor of the school newspaper, president of the debate team, and had a 4.0 GPA. I was also invisible. The night I won the state writing competition, I came home with a trophy and a scholarship check for $5,000. Mom was in the kitchen, helping Hannah with a history project that was due the next day. "Mom," I said, holding up the trophy. "I won." She glanced over, distracted. "That's wonderful, honey. Can you help me figure out how to make this poster board look less tragic?" I stood there for a moment, holding my achievement like an offering. Then I went upstairs and put the trophy on my desk, next to the others she'd never seen. Hannah's participation ribbon for junior varsity cheerleading lived on the refrigerator for 2 years. College couldn't come fast enough. I applied to Northwestern early decision. It was far enough away to feel like escape, prestigious enough to feel like achievement, and expensive enough that I'd have to earn every penny through scholarships and part-time jobs. I didn't tell Mom I was applying until I'd already been accepted. "Northwestern?" she said, looking confused. "That's so far away and so expensive. Are you sure you wouldn't be happier at the state school? Hannah's already talking about going there." Hannah was a sophomore in high school. She'd been talking about the state school because that's where her boyfriend was planning to go. "I got a full scholarship," I said. "Academic merit, it won't cost you anything." "Well," Mom said, "I suppose if you're sure." She didn't ask what I planned to study. She didn't ask about my roommate or my classes or whether I was nervous about leaving home. But she spent the next 3 months planning Hannah's junior year schedule, making sure she had the right classes to be competitive for college applications. I moved to Northwestern in August. Mom cried when she dropped me off. Real tears, not the pretty ones she usually saved for special occasions. "I'm going to miss you so much," she said, hugging me tight. "You've always been so independent, so self-sufficient. I never worry about you the way I worry about Hannah." I should have recognized the compliment buried in the dismissal. Independent, self-sufficient, code words for doesn't need me. I spent my freshman year calling home every Sunday, telling Mom about my classes, my friends, my professors, who said I had real talent. She'd listen politely, making appropriate noises before launching into updates about Hannah's latest drama. By sophomore year, I was calling every other Sunday. By junior year, it was once a month. By senior year, I only called when she called me first. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in English and psychology. I'd written my senior thesis on birth order and family dynamics, focusing on the lasting psychological effects of parental favoritism. Mom came to graduation. She spent the ceremony taking pictures of other families, asking strangers to pose with their kids so she could practice for when Hannah graduates. She never asked to see my diploma. After college, I moved to Chicago, far enough from home to feel independent, close enough that I couldn't be accused of abandoning the family. I got a job at a literary magazine, small, prestigious, the kind of place where everyone was overqualified and underpaid, but passionate about the work. I loved it. I loved the way words could be arranged and rearranged until they said exactly what you meant. I loved the way a single sentence could change everything about how someone saw the world. I started writing seriously, not just in journals anymore, but real stories about families and sisters and the mathematics of love, about girls who learned to disappear so thoroughly that they forgot how to be seen.
My editor, Janet, was a woman in her 60s who'd been in publishing for decades. She read my work with the kind of attention I'd been craving my whole life. "You write about invisibility like you've lived it," she said one day, handing back a story I'd submitted. "It's powerful, but it's also safe. You're writing around something instead of about it." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, you're writing about fictional invisible daughters, but you're not writing about your invisible daughter, the one who's telling the story." I stared at her. "I don't know what you mean." She smiled. "Yes, you do. You're just not ready to write her yet." She was right. I wasn't ready, but I was getting there. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was at work, editing a submission about modern dating, when my phone rang. "Olivia?" Mom's voice was different, lighter. "I have news." I waited. "David proposed," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "We're getting married." David was Mom's boyfriend of 2 years. He was kind, patient, and treated her like she was precious. He was everything my father hadn't been: present, attentive, generous with his affection. "That's wonderful," I said, and meant it. "I'm happy for you." "There's more," she continued. "I want you both to be my maids of honor. My 2 girls, standing beside me on the most important day of my life." For a moment, I let myself believe it. That maybe, at 47, she'd finally learned to see both of her daughters clearly. "I'd be honored," I said. "Oh, honey," her voice cracked. "I've been waiting so long to have a real family, a complete family. And now I do." I wanted to ask what we'd been before, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "Tell me about the wedding." The next 6 months consumed my life in a way I hadn't expected. While Hannah was busy with her senior year at Northwestern, the same school I'd graduated from 4 years earlier, I became Mom's wedding coordinator. It started small. "Could you just look at a few venues?" she asked. "You have such good taste." I toured 15 venues, created spreadsheets comparing pricing, capacity, and amenities, took photos of each space, noting lighting and acoustics and how the rooms would photograph. Then it was catering. "You know I'm not good with details," Mom said. "And David's so busy with work." I researched caterers, scheduled tastings, negotiated contracts. I learned about dietary restrictions and service styles and the difference between plated and buffet presentations. Then flowers, then music, then photography, then the website. "We need something online," Mom said. "Somewhere people can RSVP and get information. You're so good with computers." I spent 2 weeks building a beautiful wedding website. I wrote copy that made people cry, about love finding you when you least expect it, about second chances and new beginnings. I created a timeline of Mom and David's relationship, complete with photos and stories that made their love feel like destiny. I managed the guest list, sent invitations, tracked RSVPs. I coordinated dress fittings and tuxedo rentals and hotel room blocks. Mom would call me every few days with updates. "David's so impressed with how organized you are," she'd say. "He keeps saying he can't believe how lucky we are to have you handling everything." Lucky? Like I was a vendor they'd hired instead of a daughter who loved them. "You're so good at this," she'd tell me. "So detail-oriented, so helpful." Hannah called once during the planning process. "I feel so bad that you're doing everything," she said. "I should be helping more." "It's okay," I said. "I don't mind." And I didn't. For the first time in my life, I felt useful to my mother. Necessary. Like she couldn't do this without me. I should have recognized the pattern. I was good at being helpful. I'd always been good at being helpful, but I'd never been good at being seen. 2 weeks before the wedding, Mom called with a problem. "Hannah's supposed to give a speech," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "But she's completely overwhelmed with finals and job interviews. She hasn't even started writing it." I could hear the panic creeping in. This was Mom's biggest fear, that something would go wrong, that the day wouldn't be perfect. "I'm sure she'll figure it out," I said. "Could you, maybe, help her, guide her? You're so good with words, and she's not a writer like you are. The request felt different than the others, more personal, more important. Of course, I said. I'll call her tonight. I found Hannah in her apartment near campus, surrounded by textbooks and empty coffee cups and the kind of chaos that comes from trying to manage too many things at once. I don't know what to say, she admitted, looking genuinely distressed. I mean, I love Mom, and I'm happy for her, but I'm terrible at this stuff. I'm not like you. For the first time in years, my sister was asking for my help. Really asking. Not because Mom had told her to, but because she genuinely needed me. I sat down beside her. Tell me about Mom and David, I said. What do you love about their relationship? And she did. She told me about watching them together, about the way David listened when Mom talked, about how he remembered her coffee order and brought her flowers for no reason. She told me about the way Mom laughed now, really laughed, in a way Hannah had never heard before. She's different with him, Hannah said. Lighter. Like she's finally with someone who sees her the way she deserves to be seen. As she talked, I wrote. Not Hannah's words, but better ones, deeper ones. I crafted sentences that would capture not just Mom's happiness, but the way love should feel when it's right. I wrote about second chances and new beginnings, about finding someone who celebrates your light instead of dimming it, about the way love can heal old wounds and create new possibilities. I wrote about a mother who had learned to be vulnerable, who had found someone worthy of her trust, about a woman who had spent years putting everyone else first, finally finding someone who wanted to put her first. I wrote for 3 hours, crafting every sentence with care. Hannah watched over my shoulder, occasionally adding a memory or a detail, but mostly just marveling at the words appearing on the page. This is perfect, she breathed when I finished. This is exactly what I wanted to say, but couldn't figure out how. We spent another hour going through it together, me coaching her on timing and emphasis, helping her understand the rhythm of the words. She practiced until she could deliver it with confidence, until it sounded like it came from her heart instead of my laptop. When we finished, she hugged me. Actually hugged me, tight and real and grateful. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what I would have done without you. You're the best sister anyone could ask for. I should have kept a copy of what I'd written. Should have saved it somewhere, marked it as mine. But I trusted her. I trusted that she understood these were my words, my gift to her and to Mom. I trusted that when she delivered that speech, she'd find some way to acknowledge what I'd given her. I was still learning, even at 29, that trust and family don't always go hand in hand. The wedding day was perfect. Everything I'd planned, everything I'd coordinated, everything I'd worried about for 6 months, it all came together like a symphony. The flowers were exactly the right shade of blush pink. The venue was decorated to perfection. The weather was 75 degrees and sunny, with just enough breeze to make the outdoor ceremony feel magical. I stood beside Mom at the altar, watching her face as she said the vows I'd helped her write. David's eyes never left her face, and I could see the moment he realized he was the luckiest man alive. For a moment, I felt proud. More than proud. I felt like I'd helped create something beautiful, something lasting. The reception was at the country club I'd toured 5 times to get every detail right. The menu I'd selected after 3 tastings. The playlist I'd curated after hours of research. The centerpieces I'd designed after studying dozens of wedding magazines. Everything was perfect. The dancing was in full swing when Mom approached the microphone for her speech. She looked radiant in the dress we'd chosen together, her hair styled the way I'd suggested, her makeup applied by the artist I'd hired. I want to thank so many people tonight, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system I'd tested twice. But first, I want to thank my daughters. My heart jumped. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for my whole life. Hannah and Olivia have been my anchors through everything, Mom continued. They've supported me, loved me, and stood by me even when I didn't deserve it. I felt tears prick my eyes. Finally. Finally, she was seeing me. But tonight, I want to share something special that Hannah wrote. Something that perfectly captures what love means to me. My stomach dropped. Hannah wrote in her college essay, the one that got her into Northwestern. That love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice to see someone clearly, to celebrate their light, to stand beside them when the world feels dark. The words hit me like a physical blow. Those were my words. From the essay I'd written for Hannah's college application 5 years ago. The essay that had gotten her into Northwestern, the same school I'd graduated from with honors. She wrote that families aren't perfect, but they're ours. And that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is simply to see them. Really see them. For who they are. I had written those words at 3 in the morning in my dorm room, thinking about my own family.
About what it felt like to be overlooked, dismissed, forgotten. About the difference between being loved and being seen. She wrote that love is patient and kind, but it's also brave. It's the courage to be vulnerable, to trust someone with your heart, to believe that you're worthy of being cherished. 200 people hung on every word. I watched grown men wipe their eyes. Women clutched their husbands' hands. The room was completely silent except for Mom's voice, reading my words about love and family and the courage it takes to be seen. That's what David has given me, Mom continued, her voice growing stronger. He sees me. He celebrates me. He makes me feel worthy of love. She paused, looking out at the crowd, her eyes shining with tears. And that's what my Hannah has always done for me. She sees me. She celebrates me. She is, without question, my shining star. The room erupted in applause. Hannah beamed from her seat at the head table, graciously accepting the praise for words she'd never written. Mom's eyes found her across the room and held there, full of pride and love and recognition. I sat 3 feet away, watching my own words celebrate my sister while I remained completely invisible. A woman at the next table leaned over to her companion. What a beautiful relationship they have, she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. You can tell that girl is everything to her mother. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, stared at my reflection in the mirror. 29 years old, and I was still waiting for my mother to see me. But this time, something was different. This time, I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. I drove home that night in complete silence. No music, no phone calls, no distractions from the truth that had been building inside me for decades. I wasn't invisible because I was quiet. I wasn't forgotten because I was independent. I wasn't unloved because I was self-sufficient. I was invisible because being seen had never been an option for me. Because in a family where love was finite, Hannah had claimed all of it before I'd even learned to ask for my share. For 3 days, I sat in my apartment, staring at my laptop screen. I'd been working on a novel for 2 years, a story about sisters and mothers, and the way love gets distributed unequally in families. I'd been writing it in stolen moments, convinced it wasn't good enough, too personal, too raw. But sitting there with Mom's words still echoing in my head, I realized something. I was done being polite about my own erasure. I opened the file and began to write. Not the careful diplomatic prose I'd been crafting, but something true. Something that hurt. I wrote about the jewelry box and the charm bracelets that were never meant for me. I wrote about Christmas mornings and graduation ceremonies, and the 7-second delay between speaking and being heard. I wrote about college essays and wedding speeches, and the way your own words can be stolen and repurposed and credited to someone else. I wrote about daughters who learn to disappear so thoroughly that they forget how to be seen. About mothers who love imperfectly and sisters who accept praise for achievements that were never theirs. I wrote for 18 hours straight. When I finally stopped, I had 40,000 words in a story that felt like bleeding. The book was called The Invisible Daughter, a memoir of borrowed love. I finished it in 3 months. It was raw, honest, devastating. It was everything I'd been too polite to say for 29 years. My agent sold it in a week. 3 publishers bid on it. The winner called it a searing examination of family dynamics and the mathematics of favoritism. The publication date was set for September, exactly 1 year after Mom's wedding. I didn't tell Mom about the book deal or Hannah. I just let it exist in the world, waiting. The book came out on a Tuesday in September. By Friday, it was trending on social media. By the following Tuesday, it was number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. The reviews were everything I dreamed of as a writer, a masterpiece of emotional honesty. Bennett writes with the precision of a surgeon and the heart of a poet. This book will change how you think about family. But the real validation came from the readers. Thousands of messages from women who recognized themselves in my words. Daughters who had been overlooked, dismissed, forgotten. Sisters who had lived in someone else's shadow. You told my story, one woman wrote. I thought I was the only one who felt this way. I've been invisible my whole life, wrote another. Reading your book made me feel seen for the first time. The messages kept coming, hundreds of them. Women sharing their own stories of favoritism, of borrowed achievements, of mothers who saw some daughters more clearly than others. 3 months after publication, Netflix bought the rights. The headline in Variety read, Invisible Daughter Gets the Spotlight. Bennett's memoir headed to screen. That's when Mom called. Olivia, she said, her voice careful, controlled. I wanted to call and say congratulations. On the book. It's quite an achievement. I waited for more. An apology. An explanation. An acknowledgement of what she'd read. Thank you, I said finally. I hope you know, she continued, that I've always been proud of you. You've always been so independent, so self-sufficient. I never worried about you the way I worried about Hannah. There it was. The excuse wrapped in a compliment. I was invisible because I was strong. I was forgotten because I was capable. I was unloved because I didn't need it. I know, I said. And for the first time in my life, I did know. I understood exactly what she was telling me. She cleared her throat. There's going to be a book club discussion at the library next month about your book. I thought maybe I could come if that's all right with you. I almost laughed. After 29 years of being invisible, she wanted to be seen at my event. Of course, I said. It's open to the public. The library was packed. 75 women, a handful of men, all holding copies of my book. Many of them had tears in their eyes before I even began to speak. I sat at the front of the room, facing the audience, and saw her in the 3rd row. Mom, looking smaller than I remembered, clutching a pristine hardcover copy of my book. Hannah wasn't there. The discussion was everything I'd hoped for and more. Women sharing their own stories of invisibility, of borrowed love, of mothers who saw some daughters more clearly than others. There was pain in that room, but also recognition. Community. The relief that comes from knowing you're not alone. During the Q&A, a woman in the back row raised her hand. I've been thinking about your wedding speech scene, she said. The part where your mother quotes your sister's essay. That was actually your essay, wasn't it? I nodded. The room fell silent. How did that feel? She asked. To hear your own words credited to someone else? I looked directly at Mom. She was staring at her hands, her face pale. It felt, I said slowly, like the most honest moment of my life. Because it was exactly what had been happening for 29 years. My thoughts, my words, my achievements, they were never really mine. They were just borrowed by people who knew how to be seen. The room erupted in snaps and murmurs of agreement. Women nodded knowingly. Several people turned to look at Mom. But here's what I realized, I continued. I didn't need their permission to be seen. I just needed to stop waiting for it. After the event, Mom approached me carefully. Could we talk? She asked quietly. Privately? We walked to the parking lot in silence. She unlocked her car but didn't get in. I read the book, she said finally. All of it. Twice. I waited. I didn't know, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know you felt... I never meant to make you feel invisible. I know, I said. And I did know. That was the hardest part. She hadn't meant to hurt me. She'd just loved imperfectly the way most parents do. Can you forgive me? She asked, tears streaming down her face. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. She was small, fragile, human. She had loved the best way she knew how. It just hadn't been enough. I don't need to forgive you, I said gently. I need to stop waiting for you to see me. She started crying harder then. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so, so sorry. I hugged her because she needed it. Because forgiveness isn't always about the other person. Because she was still my mother, and I still loved her. But I didn't tell her it was okay, because it wasn't. The Netflix series premiered 6 months later. They cast an incredible actress to play me, someone who understood the quiet devastation of being overlooked. The show was beautiful, painful, necessary. It won 3 Emmy nominations. Hannah called after the first episode aired. I watched it, she said, her voice small. I had no idea you felt that way. I know, I said. That was the problem. I'm sorry, she said, for the college essay, for the wedding speech, for taking credit for your words, for not seeing what was happening. You were a kid, I said. We both were. But I'm not a kid now, she said, and I should have known better. I should have seen you. We talked for 3 hours, really talked, about the jewelry box and the college essays and the wedding speech, about the space between love and favoritism, and how sometimes they look the same from the outside. She's in therapy now, so is mom. They're both reading books about sibling dynamics and family systems and the lasting impact of favoritism. I'm proud of them for that, but I'm prouder of myself for not needing their recognition to know my own worth. Last month, I received a letter from a 17-year-old girl in Ohio. She'd read my book for her AP literature class. I'm the invisible daughter in my family, she wrote. But after reading your book, I realized something. Maybe I'm not invisible. Maybe I'm just waiting for the right people to see me. She's applying to college next year. She wants to study journalism. She's going to write her own story. I wrote her back immediately. I told her about jewelry boxes and wedding speeches and the long journey from invisible to seen. I told her that sometimes love isn't withheld, it's misdirected. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is to stop chasing it. I told her that being seen isn't about being perfect or helpful or self-sufficient. It's about being true to who you are, even when, especially when, no one else is paying attention. She thought she was the only one, but she's not. None of us are. We're everywhere. The invisible daughters, the forgotten ones, the girls who learned to make themselves small so others could shine. And now we're being seen. Not by the people who couldn't see us before, but by each other. By the ones who matter. By ourselves. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's everything.